out. So it's called Heart Howl, and it's based on a quote by Charles Simic. He who cannot howl will never find his pack. I confess that I have never been entirely trustworthy because I have not been totally truthful about who I am. I have ducked and fudged, pretended and defended. I have been afraid and ashamed. I have projected and rejected and sought outside myself for that which I am. I confess I have betrayed myself in the name of belonging, and then betrayed every group, relationship, belief system, or identity that I belonged to if it stopped me loving and belonging to all others. Chameleon-like, I have blended into every environment, hiding, waiting, gathering strength. I confess that I am love and have always been, in spite of the veils I so eagerly wrapped myself in. I confess that confessing is both a total relief and a vulnerable surrender. I feel like I have been coming out now since the 60s, but only now emerging naked into a world that both desperately wants love and is also desperate to prove that it does not exist and cannot be trusted. This is the freeing of love and the loving of freedom. My heart tells me that all over the world, others are emerging, blinking from their caves because some horn has sounded somewhere in cosmos calling us. I know I do not have the strength to stand and walk alone, although I need no assistance. It does not matter. It is time. And so this is my heart howl to my pack, my tribe who has no tribe. What unites them is the confession, the truth-telling, each inside his or her own heart, that they no longer have any choice, but to emerge like cicadas coming up from the earth, or turtles hatching on the moon and beginning the run to the sea. Some deep tide of awakening has come upon us, and another generation that has been dreaming and nurturing the truth that it is love is ripe and bursting. It is not an organization or a creed, but an irresistible movement, a stirring of the cosmic soul, synergistically and synchronistically convergent. Some things I do know deep in the rhythms and pulsings of my heart blood. I am not an activist or a pacifist, a conservationist or a hedonist. I am love, and I have no idea what I'm going to do next. I am not straight, gay, bisexual, or transgender. I am neither monogamous, polyamorous, promiscuous, or celibate. I am love, and I have no idea who or how I'm going to love next. I am not conservative or liberal, green, blue, or teal. I am not Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, or Jew. I am love, and I have no idea what I am going to think or adore next. There is nothing inner or outer, above or below, left or right that I adhere to. My fidelity is to the moment by moment arising in the core of my heart, which lets me know what is truth for me here and now. I am radical, dangerous to all that seek to exclude or contain me, wild and free and beautiful. I recognize that many others do not have such a touchstone that they trust, and so for them, this attitude can appear simply as an excuse for license. I recognize for many that a set of rules or mental guidelines is appropriate and right. I recognize that I must be vigilant in keeping my heart clear and open in order to hear and bear the divinity that is expressing there. I choose this way, this flow of eros, this pathless path unfolding in each creative moment, for it is my way, the way that the love I am wants to unfold and flow into my world. I do not know your way, but I am curious to see how the love that you are is calling you and dancing you in your own journey to the ocean. This is my full moon heart howl, and I sound it clear and strong on the winds of spirit blowing through the torn veils in the temple that is this beautiful earth. So that was my coming out howl. And I remember at the time, a lot moving for me. And I remember my mother saying to me, you know what? I think you're gay. It's okay. You know, we'll love you anyway. And I remember thinking to myself on the inside, oh my God, if only it was that simple. Like if only that was it, if only I could just be part of a minority that, wanted to stand up for a different way of loving. But it seemed just so much more enormous, that it wasn't about loving men, although of course I love men. It was about the vulnerability of telling the truth about being love, and to emerge in the same way that everyone who's had to come out as love has to emerge, whether it's gays or transgender or women's rights or the environment or whatever it is. It's just a version of love coming out of the soul of the world saying, I'm not going to be boxed. I'm not going to be marginalized. The love that I am is going to come out, and it's going to keep expanding. It's going to include more and more and more. And so, we're at a point where it's not just racism and sexism and all of these other isms. We have a kind of speciesism, that being human on the planet also has to expand to include all other species and all other life. So love is going to keep emerging, and it's going to keep expanding. And it's something that's a political act inside every human being, because we are that love. That's who we are in our essence. It's emerging in our own hearts. So part of this transition time between worlds is that courage to emerge as love, however it wants to emerge and express through each of us individually. So when it comes down to the great divisions in life, sex and gender are big. And so I want to say that we're not confined. Our humanity is not limited by our biology or our gender. However, it's wrapped in them. These are the wrappings that we wear. And so, I think the first move that I really want to encourage people to make is a move away from the traditional idea of being a man or a woman. And so there's this beautiful Irish joke that I like, which goes, it's about a tourist in Ireland who's trying to find Dublin. So he stops someone on the street and says, can you tell me how to get to Dublin? And the Irishman says, well, if I was going to Dublin, I wouldn't be starting from here. And so there's a place that represents in terms of being a man or a woman. And once you start with that, once you start with the idea that I'm a man or a woman, that I'm of this or that gender, then you can't get to Dublin. If what Dublin is awakening as love, you can't get there as a partial identity. So while many people, that's the journey is to become someone first, and then they're really busy trying to define what that someone is. I'm this, I'm that, and I like this kind of, product. And adolescents are at a time when they're really trying to define an identity that is authentic and different from other people's identities. So that's the time everybody goes into looking for a sense of an authentic self. The thing is that we have a civilization that's stuck in that kind of adolescence, that's stuck in identity and stuck in defining identity. And then we have to go through a whole processes of trying to come out of our identity and trying to expand into something archetypal. So, you think of all of that energy and time we spend trying to be someone, and then we have to embark on a spiritual path to try to be no one again, or to be everyone. So it would just be so much easier if we didn't start from there. We didn't start from believing that we are a separate identity. If we didn't start from individualism, if we didn't start from the wave trying to eventually get a taste of the ocean. If we started with the deep understanding, because the soul of the world was awake, that we are the ocean experiencing itself as a wave. That's the distinction. So if you're a wave, you can stand up for all of the rights of the waves that have not been recognized by society, but you're still a wave. To be the ocean is something different. So that would be the first move. The first move is a sidestep. You know, it would be beautiful if we didn't do this genderizing and biologizing of every soul that came into incarnation. Okay, you're a boy or you're a girl, and then all of the cultural conditioning starts. So you could say the difference between sex and gender is sex is the biology. Maybe you came into a male body or a female body or an intersex body, and gender is all of the social constructs and the conditionings and the stories that that we create. And while it is important to create better stories, so to create better definitions of the cultural conditioning of what it is to be a man, or better stories about healthy, divine, masculine, feminine, as long as we are still being a man or a woman, we're still just creating a better story for the prison of an identity. So one of the beautiful things about watching everything that's happened in gender over the last 50 years is the gradual coming out of the box, you know, coming out of the box of having to be in a heterosexual stereotype, and coming out of the box of having to be in a particular gender. And then, you know, one of the beautiful places now that I feel like is the jumping off point between body, mind, and soul is non-binary. The whole idea of identifying as non-binary instead of identifying as a man or as a woman, identifying with as a they, that I am not limited by a particular gender or pronoun or whatever. And of course, that's the last jumping off place before admitting, finally confessing that actually you're just love. You just love whatever, you know, expression of that love is. Whether that love is dressed up, whether that love is dressed up in a male or a female gender or sex, and what its preference is in terms of how it engages others. So it would be beautiful at the beginning if we weren't encouraged to so deeply enmesh ourselves in identity that we then had to go on a long journey to get free of that identity. And of course, what's happened in the world is that we've become very good at identity, and we've become, we've delayed the inevitable awakening process, because that requires the letting go of identity. And the letting go of identity requires the awakening again as love. So, first move is be careful about identifying as a man or a woman. And second move is be careful about identifying as gay or straight or, you know, bi or whatever. It's like, admit and honor the fact that you're in a preference, that this is the feeling that's running through me right now. This is what's true. But making it a label, making it a box, making it something that you identify with can be really challenging. So, the next point I want to make is about the relationship between humans as a species. So, first of all, I don't want to minimize the fact that sexism exists, racism exists, patriarchy exists, colonialism exists. All of these ways where certain members of a species, humanity in this case, thought they knew something that made them more important than others, meant that there was repression and marginalization of parts of ourself. That just is. However, changing that is a very useful thing, but changing that in itself does not awaken people as love. It just allows for a greater diversity of the expression of that love and a more even expression of it. And that is a worthwhile thing, but it's not awakening as love. So where I'm talking to you from is what used to be an old Catholic monastery. For 50 years, it was a Catholic monastery where mainly white males came to see if they wanted to be priests. They came to try to open themselves to love in the same way that people have done all through time, regardless of the prejudices and the controls of the civilization that they're in. I'm sure there's people in the Taliban that genuinely are trying to connect to love and are connected to love in spite of the fact that they are enclosed in an ideology. that we may not agree with or like. So, here was the Catholic Church busy trying to connect with God as they understood God. And as part of that whole system, God was particularly for white males, of course. And now we have this beautiful monastery, ringing to sounds of lovemaking between men and men, woman and woman, between people singing. We have all of the breaking open of ideas around the way people should be with their gender and their sexuality are open. But it doesn't necessarily, all of that is beautiful and wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily make it more loving. It makes it more diverse. It makes love able to flow through many more channels than it was able to before. But that in and of itself does not create love. So we have tried this many, many times on the planet. Change the form, keep changing the form. That's not a loving form. That's not the way that we would like it to do. Let's change the form to something else. All of that is progress for the body mind. It's growing a more diverse body mind. But none of that necessarily helps us awaken as love, because love is not based on identity politics. Love is transcending of that. So the same pressures that we have to push against in order to awaken as love are there regardless of how diverse we are. Those pressures have got to do with whether or not we identify with what's going on in our consciousness and in our erotic body and in our physical body and our hormones and our biology. To what extent are we conditioned by these things, including our self-concept? And to what extent can we transcend that? And when we can transcend our body mind, now the soul is love. So awakening as love is the same as awakening as your soul. And that soul is not just a male soul or a female soul or even a human soul. That soul is love. And that love can express itself through a human being. And it can express it through masculinity and through femininity. It can express itself through a myriad of things. But it's the same love. And you can start to tell the difference between when it's love speaking and when it's identity. And so the big challenge is not so much then about diversity of identity. The challenge is about whether or not we are doing the work to keep becoming aware of the love that's at our core. So then we come to the, apart from identity politics and so on, we get to cultural appropriation, this whole thing of, because there is privilege and because there is inequity, you have to be very careful about attempting to speak for experiences that you haven't had. But there's a difference between the soul doing that and the body mind. The body mind often can use everything for its self-aggrandizement. The soul is going to turn everything towards love. So there's a difference between empathy, which helps us identify with someone else, which helps us say, I am a woman as well. I am indigenous as well. And there's a difference between that and cultural appropriation. When JFK said in Berlin, I'm a Berliner, he was making a statement of empathy and identification. It wasn't met with like, well, how could you possibly say you're a Berliner? Well, what do you know about being in Berlin? And how you've never experienced what we've gone through, because it was a statement of empathy. And the same now, I don't know if any of you have had that experience of species guilt. It's one thing I know from being in a white male body, I know about white male guilt and about what it's like to actually both feel the benefits of privilege, but then also carry the weight of also being seen just as that white male rather than being seen as the soul. So imagine how it is for us as a species. Once we get past all of our honoring everything it is to be a human being and recognizing and celebrating every type of expression of being human, then we're going to experience, and we are already experiencing, that species guilt of sitting in nature and feeling, yeah, I'm human. And I remember sitting in nature and feeling like, hey, I recycle, you know, like I'm not responsible for everything that my species does. Like I want to be friends with you. I love you, you know, like, and I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed of being human in a human-centric world. And if we get past the idea of treating other people without love and without respect, then we have to wonder about nature. Then we have to extend that love to all of the chickens and the pigs and so on that we do all of these horrendous things to, because we distance them in the same way that we used to distance indigenous people. I remember growing up as a kid looking at my comic books were like Red American Indians and Cowboys and Indians, or the Germans, the Krauts, and the whole story that was being fed is that's them. And once you have a them, then you can get away with treating them the way any body mind wants to treat another body mind when it's not awake, which is for the preference and the benefit of that body mind. So the problem is objectification. So then if we objectify nature, how is that any different ultimately than turning the virus into the enemy, the war on the virus? How is like having these pictures of spike proteins and so on any different than showing, you know, cannibals or, you know, the Taliban or whatever? As soon as we begin to demonize some section of life, then we are narrowing ourselves down in our identity. So when I said, you know, when I was coming out, it was much worse than being gay. Once you decide that love is your identity, then you can't make that selective. It has to keep growing and keep including more and more. And so for humanity to awaken as love in a species transfer, it's got to get past being human-centric. And if we're human-centric, it means we are still looking at nature as something that we are separate from and that we have dominion over. So this is probably the big challenge that we're all in terms of how we awaken as love. And if we come back to the sex and gender issue, we can see, because it's a polarity, that if the polarity is that the masculine is seeking dominion over the feminine, and that's affecting our social code, then you can also see how it's damaging to both sides of that polarity, because both sides, that's not true. The truth is that we're love. So if we have separated ourselves off from nature, that's damaging not just to nature, but also to humans. So the effort of awakening as love becomes unstoppable once you decide that that's what your identity is. So, yeah, I feel for many people that path comes through gender, and it comes through standing up for small acts of love, and then eventually standing up for love itself wherever it expresses and wherever it finds itself. So whenever love is emerging in all of our lives, it's challenging, because to stand up for love means you meet prejudice, and you meet projection, and you meet all the kinds of judgments that come on anybody's body mind when it emerges. And so that's why that heart how is important. That's why we have to find our pack, because lovers, people who are awakening as love and who stand for that, have actually more in common with each other than they do with body minds that share their same ideology. And I think everybody gets to that point where they join a group of people who think like them or feel like them or have the same concepts as them, and yet their heart still hurts when love is violated. So each of us have an organ, you know, that of our hearts that isn't personal. It's got a personal component, but it's got a transpersonal point. And everybody's heart hurts when love is violated in your families, in your communities, in the world. And as that organ is coming online more powerfully, and we're feeling it more powerfully, then we can't repress it. The heart, which is the one heart, is coming along awake. And as it comes awake, people are going through all kinds of mental health issues, all kinds of depression issues, that feeling of something is trying to emerge in me, that if I say yes to it, that if I allow it, then life's not going to be the same. I'm not going to be able to hold the same identifications that I've been holding. So finding each other and recognizing when love is present and when somebody is making that call for love means that we can grow and extend that beyond the politics. So, and having said that, that doesn't mean that there isn't any still need to change things in the realm of the body-mind world. There are so many things to be changed there, but it's different changing it knowing that you are the ocean that is expressing through a wave to make a more equitable world for other waves. It's different than if you're standing up as that wave thinking you are it. So I want to open to a few questions about what's important to you in this realm of sex and gender, because I know that so many people are struggling with breaking out of the old paradigms about what it is to be a man or what it is to be a woman. And I want to know where the burning questions are, because one of the things that I have experienced is polarity teachings coming back. So it being a push away from the idea of the masculine and feminine being present, and that if you're in a man's body, you need to be a man. If you're a woman's body, you need to be a woman, and you need to understand and accept that before you can transcend it. And I remember a deep argument, that was a beautiful ongoing conversation I had with another Tantra teacher once, and her view was always like, first of all, get used to being the body that you're in. And then when you're in that body, you can begin to transcend it. And my argument was always like, first of all, remember that you are love and beyond your gender, and then drop into it and you can adapt it. And my experience was that many people haven't really fully landed in the body that they're in because the soul is rejecting being boxed in a particular way. And so many people, because the soul does not want to land in a box that's less than its wholeness, then it kind of hovers and stays out from fully accepting its embodiment. And other people have gone and identified so powerfully with their bodies that they've let go of pieces of their own wholeness, their own potential. So yeah, what's alive in this field, both here and online? Yeah, so just put your hand up if you have something that is alive for you. And something that actually moves you, that's deeply alive in your heart, particularly that quality of the heart that feels the violation of the law of love.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I can be heard.
Yeah, you're heard.
So thank you for your transmission. As usual, it's interesting to listen to. And well, in a way, comes the question why to have a gender at all? I mean, to have a gender in itself is kind of like the problem. So therefore, to let go of an identity that is separated and know myself as love, which is happening through all of us as the ultimate entity. And then maybe even like it's even not an entity, it's like just releasing the singularity. And so this is what I echo. And yeah, I would love reflection on that.
Well, maybe, but I would just say, of course, we are love, and why have a gender? Is because we're in bodies, and so we are love experiencing itself in a male body, for example, or a female body. Gender is more of the realm of what we decide about that, what our concepts and ideation about being in a male body, what being a man means, and so on. But the truth is that as love, we are embodied, and we're embodied in biology that has its own hormones and its own instincts and its own built-in patternings from the past. And so we are still in a particular sex or biology, and we are probably still running gender belief systems from our culture and conditionings. So I guess there's always going to be a bridge between our embodiment and our reality as the singularity. And that bridge is going to be what we decide to tell the story of the love that we are. So what our mythology is, what our gender identity is, all of those are a kind of myth or a story that links our truth as love and our actual embodied experience as being in a mammalian body of one particular gender. All right, so yeah, that was beautiful on the philosophical side, and then also I'm interested in something that's burning alive for someone's heart right now.
I'd like to go if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've been battling with is I've been in a traditional heterosexual relationship, been married for 21 years, and going through all of that and whatever the more normal worldly people do, chasing success, raising kids, blah, 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 did all of that. And it still left me in that place of empty, feeling empty and meaningless. So to break away from this mold and having experienced, a taste of that love that you talk about, I'm at that transition point where, yeah, I don't want any of these labels to hold me anymore. And I want to go towards love and sharing love and giving love and receiving love. And part of it was acceptance of who I am in my body, for sure. So I completely resonate with that. Um, and then the thought comes that if I'm loving, then I'm loving to all. So I have to be loving to all the people I've been with for the last 20 odd years since I've been in this country. So I'm at that cusp now where I'm trying to love what I already have, but also then go for where my heart desires, and I don't know what that is at this point in time. Therefore, I'm not committing to anything either. I'm just leaving it all open. So I'd just like some feedback on what you think where I'm at in this journey and what's next for me.
Well, it sounds like you are in the journey of the uncertainty that love brings for you, which is instead of following a particular path or identifying with a particular way, you're just starting to become love, and it means that you actually have no idea who you're going to love next. You don't really know, and you don't even know what that's going to look like erotically, and you don't know what that's going to look like in any way, because if you start surrendering to love, then love is going to show you what love wants through you rather than you. And this is the difference between truly letting the ocean take your life as a wave and you like guiding your own ship based on your concept of what you might want next. And I know for me that that's a very scary stage of the journey, because there's a sense of like, well, who am I? And of course, who you are is situational now. It's not fixed. Who you are is fluid, like love is fluid, and who you are may surprise you in the next moment. So yeah, beautiful stage you are in the journey, and sometimes terrifying. And that's one of the reasons why it's important for us to all find each other and find other people who have the courage to take that particular journey. So thanks for your question.
Hi, Bruce. My question goes to the role of Eros and love, because at the same time, I can easily love and deeply love my friends. I just, more often than not, I'm not attracted to males. The same goes for some females. I'm just not as attracted. And it just, I mean, somewhere is a threshold where I can love them and just cannot have sex with them because the attraction is not there. But so I'm just trying to figure out there is somewhere a fine line that things then split, and what is the role of Eros in there?
Yeah, well, I mean, just because we love everybody doesn't mean we have to have sex with them. And however, we can, I mean, my experience is that there's a difference between consciousness love, like the idea of loving everybody, and the reality. So I know as a man, like making love with a man, having a man's cock inside me gave me an experiential understanding that I would never have had if it was just in consciousness. So it's one thing to love someone, it's another thing to kind of be intimately connected with their body and experience that. Being open to where love might take you, that might surprise you, can be a beautiful thing. But trying to force yourself to go somewhere just in the name of like equality, or that you should because you love somebody, I think doesn't work. My experience, if you're really wanting love to guide you, love will show you through your attractions what is the next piece that you are wanting to grow in yourself. And I feel like a lot of our attractions with other people, whether they're male or female bodies, I just love saying, over here, there's something for you to learn to love that is on the outside of you now, and it's a mystery and it's attractive to you, but ultimately it will come on the inside. So I feel like being open and also trusting that Eros is a beautiful guide to where love wants to move.
Hi, I have a question that's really burning inside me and I'm almost surprised by it, but it's around I'm guessing I'm after a perspective on the possible dangers of teaching about gender in children and in going into high school. Like I have known that it's been in the curriculum now about, teaching children, they can be either gender, both, and I thought, great, I think that's awesome, and then now it's really being brought into my awareness of all this mass movement of detransitioning of people, kids who are confused and teenagers who transition and now they're detransitioning, and it's becoming huge, and a lot of anger in this community of certain teachings of what's being brought to the curriculum. So I'm seeing how there's like a danger side. Like I like what you said about I'd recognize that we're the ocean, but I feel like with kids there's already so much confusion around sexuality. I know my own journey with that was such a head fuck. The amount of online quizzes I had to do to see if I was a lesbian and then realizing I'm not that anyway. So I'm just seeing how there's a danger side. So I'm wondering, your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, I think it's what I said before, that you can tell the difference between when something is being used as an ideation and when something is genuinely love, because love has a lot of spaciousness and ideation doesn't. Ideation becomes politicized really fast and it becomes the new thing. And so putting ideation on our children, even what we think is better ideation from the last generation, is still just more ideation. It isn't the spaciousness of helping them discover who they are and actually integrate with the actual body that they're in. And so that journey of acknowledging where we come from in the start, and acknowledging where a child comes from, and then supporting them, not to be free to be whatever they want, but to discover what they want and to have some guidance by those who are around them in male bodies or in female bodies or intersex bodies about what it's like to be in that body. You know, again, not from a gendered position. So I feel like just leaving it open deprives them of the very real guidance, but then trying to guide children with their sexuality is fraught in this culture. So the best thing we do is to just leave them with a few online quizzes and then figure it out with a few other people who are figuring it out. And maybe at the change of worlds, that's not a bad thing. It's better than dogma and indoctrination, but it's a long way from truly standing and helping the generation to come, like discover for themselves what is real and true with healthy models of sexuality. So yeah, thank God for the human spirit that it comes through anyway. And here and there, people do break through and do find their expression if they keep making the journey. So where did you end up in terms of how you identify? Anyway, maybe your volume's gone now or you're muted.
No, just 1 second. Oh, there we go. It wasn't letting me unmute. Well, I had a really great year where I did identify as a lesbian and I felt like I knew myself. It was a really awesome year. I got into like the queer community at university. I loved it. And then, yeah, there was like this day I was just in this such expansive state of love. Like I just felt really one with everything. And I was walking down the street and obviously that energy must have been emanating out, and a man stopped me and just, he asked me out because he was, you know, he felt this energy that I had. And I came into my body mind and I said, oh, I'm a lesbian. And as soon as I said that, I burst out laughing because I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever, like it had no resonance. I was like, I'm love. Like the box felt so stupid. And then I just sort of blew it all up into the wind. Like the boxes that I'd sort of labeled as were just confetti that was flying everywhere. And then, yeah, I sort of went on a journey of really missing missing being in a box and having the identity. So yeah, I've sort of let them all go and feel I am love and just not been enjoying exploring connections with many. But yeah, gender still like loving being a woman, but enjoying, you know, knowing that I'm not that either. So, but it's been a huge journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Other observations or offerings in this important subject for us all?
Hello. Thank you
Hi.
so much. I so appreciate all your thoughts. My question is around romantic love, and the particular sticking point for me, I find, is that I want to flow into this river of abundant love that you're talking about. I want to be free to express everything I need to and feel compelled to, but so often I find myself being stopped or blocked or pulled back by my human trauma or my human pain or my human hurts, you know, which have to be acknowledged and worked through. But at the same time, it's how do you be this full, loving, open human, attracting that love back when you are human with those human hurts and pains and traumas? And I just would really appreciate your thoughts on that, because that's what I'm really struggling with at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I heard it all because of the volume, but the sound. But I think what I heard was just struggling with the romantic longing to interact with others and deal with the personal human wounding that we all have from our conditioning as that comes up in romantic relationship. Yeah, and I guess for me the analogy I have is like the peeling of the onion, that yes, we all have wounding, that we all have, because we've come into a culture and a society and families and so on that isn't soul-based and doesn't see us as the love that we are, and puts all of these emotional woundings and other woundings on us. So yes, we have these, and they can't be denied. They're part of our humanity. But if we sit within those and try to heal them, then we're like trying to get to Dublin. You know, we're coming from within the wound, trying to heal the wound, and we're seeking to get the love that we never got. But the deeper truth is that we are the core of the onion. We know that we are, even conceptually, we are love. So we are the very thing that part of us missed, our emotional self at 8, you know, or our 13-year-old, that self that is wounded, that plays out in romantic projections in relationship and is longing for someone else to be the father we never had, or you know, like love us in a way that we'd never had. That wound can only really be solved from the inside. So it still needs to be solved. We still need to own our humanness and to do the healing. But if we're coming from seeking outside of us for that healing, we're bound to be eventually disappointed and disillusioned, so that we can fall into our core and remember that we actually are love, and that the love that we are seeking is inside us as well as outside. So for me, that means not trying to transcend it and disassociate from our human wounding, but pulling the identity out. So you're no longer that piece of wound. You have it, and you can be open with it when you enter in relationship. Look, I have this mother wound, you know, like I've been working on for 10 years, and I'll probably project it on you. And could you help me with it? And I'll help you with yours, but you're not the source of its healing. I'm the source of its healing, and I have the resources inside me. And then I feel like it means you're willing to go out into relationship as a normal broken human, rather than as someone who's either above it or someone who's protecting themselves because they feel their own suffering that's still going on. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. Anyone here got something that's alive?
I do, Bruce.
Okay.
It's wonderful to be back in that room with you.
Yeah.
So there's a line in Much Ado About Nothing where he says, I have long been an obstinate heretic in the despite of love. And, you know, I feel like the past 60 years, I have been armored and hiding from love. And I've come to realize in the last couple of months that I have been utterly unsatisfied with anything but that. And so I find myself at this place where nothing, I haven't allowed it to pour into me or feel it fully, but I'm in this in between initiatory place. And yet I feel kind of desperate for living in the experience of that. And I guess I would just love for you to speak to that transition, knowing that you've passed through that, and anything that might help me be patient with myself as I sit and wait to be called forward into my attractions. There's more to that sentence, but I'll just stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. It's good to see you. And yeah, I'm just feeling your heart. I mean, my experience of that place is helplessness, utter helplessness. You know, when you realize that nothing you've ever done or tried to do in the name of love has actually achieved what it is that you really want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like a surrender of being taken. You can't get there yourself, you know, you can't You can't move there yourself. Love has to come for you, you know. There's a line from Rumi, like, whoever brought me here will have to take me home. Like, love brought me here. Love will have to reach its hand towards me, you know. Yeah.
So you have no no advice.
I have no help. I'm sorry. This is it, Sam. This is the help. This is as good as it gets. You know, we're helpless together. You know, you're gonna lean in with your helplessness to others that are helpless. Like, we're all fucked, mate. You know? We're all fucked together.
Yeah.
Humanity's got to make this huge stride now into love, and we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So just the confession to me is the beginning of the magic, you know, and I hear your confession, I hear your helplessness, and it's beautiful to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, sorry, you're fucked.
Thank you. Thank you. The resonance is incredibly helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for being a demonstration of the very thing that we're all trying to find grace for. Maybe as soon as, okay, go ahead.
Hi, Bruce. Hi, everybody. You almost made me cry also. I'm coming from, I was born in Romania and I'm living in the Netherlands. So listening to you today, I was thinking, a friend of mine, she told me she kissed a transgender person yesterday. And I was like, and in Romania, they have a problem accepting homosexuality. I never was ashamed I'm Romanian, but since they are talking very badly about accepting homosexuality and teaching in school now, I'm very much ashamed of it. So I was dealing with this one, and I like to accept everybody how it is. And the question for you is, how can we change the, but I notice in myself, you know, I accept everybody, but I was thinking I will never kiss a transgender or maybe a woman, but now I changed with a woman since last month. A girl, she got in love of, how do you say it? And I was thinking it's very beautiful, you know, and I was like, okay, what's nice. But I was thinking I'm not gonna kiss a transgender person. And then my girlfriend said, I did kiss somebody. And I was thinking today, why should I not kiss a transgender person? He's also a person that we can love. So I have these thoughts today, and then you start talking and was resonating. But the question is, I was again ashamed about the Romanian. So my question to you was, how can we change the culture? How can I help them also to understand, you know, I'm being far away now.
Yeah.
The second.
It's a beautiful question. Thank you. And I think it doesn't just apply to Romania and its attitude to transgender. It applies to every culture and all the way down to our families. You know, I'm sure you, like many people, were in a family where there's things that are going on with people that you love, that the way that they think, the way that they treat each other is harmful to your heart. And, you know, whether it's just a bigoted father or whether it's, you know, a racist brother, we all have the experience of sitting with people that we love and feeling that we have to stand up for something other than that. So the question is how to stand up and stay loving. Because as soon as we like demonize the people that we love for their belief systems or the way that they are, then we're breaking the very same thing, the law of love. So how to be truthful and stay loving, how to love your country and at the same time understand that for it to grow an expression of love, then it will probably have to look at the way that it treats minorities. But it always comes back to just the same with your family, you know, how do you love your brother that sees the world differently than you do, and in a way that doesn't just accept it, that actually stands up for the love that you are, but is open to the fact that you probably are going to discover new things about yourself tomorrow that you didn't know today, and that the people around you are going to as well. So I love the idea that you're entertaining the possibility of kissing somebody who's transgender and seeing what that might be like. Because I think a lover is an adventurer. There's somebody who isn't closed. They're open to love, showing them and growing them. So yeah, thank you. What else is alive?
Kia ora, Bruce,
Hi.
Michael, Ocean.
Hiya, Michael.
I would like you to expand a little more on standing up and loving in terms of beyond the context of Haydn, beyond the context of a festival event. Would you be willing to talk to how do you do it with your family, or how do you do it with your community beyond these safe contexts? Because I'm thinking of the embryos, the children, the young adults in our society that need to see us.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is politics, Michael. And I think that politics that comes from love vibrates. And that vibration normally comes from having love in your environment and in your family and in your community, and then vibrating out that wider. Once we go into ideation politics, which is standing up in the world for ideas, then that can very quickly break the law of love. So love is relational. And at the same time, we can't just leave a whole generation that are trying to find contact with people who are awake and loving. We can't just leave them. So becoming visible in a way that's sustainable. And I don't know about you, but my experience is that that's been gradual for me. It's one thing to be able to come out as love to myself, to nature, to beloveds, to community. It's another thing to be able to stand and receive all of the projection that inevitably comes from anyone who stands up for love. So I feel like I don't have judgment about how people do it or the way that they do it. Some people, their love is just poured into being an amazing fucking market gardener. They produce the best vegetables in the world. And that's their expression of love. And it will ripple out to their whole world. You know, I love what Einstein said, is that everything in the universe is vibrational resonance. And nothing can stop your vibration making the strings all across the universe vibrate. And other people work in the world of ideation. They stand up for gender equality. They stand up for the rainbow movement. They stand up for these things so that generations ahead can see that there are lights, and that's beautiful as well. I guess the question in each person, and that's what we're doing in a place like this, is allowing each person to find out what's true for you. Like, how is love moving for you? And how do we find the courage to help each other make the call that love asks of us? And I love your glasses, by the way. Actually, you're muted, Michael. Can't hear you. Yeah, now you're on.
Still pending the question. Could you give a concrete sharing of your loving beyond Haydn, beyond the festival events, in your own family or community, where it's the loving?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's what I'm doing right now, is an expression of that love, trying to allow it to flow out into people who haven't got the possibility of coming to Haydn or coming to a festival, but they are interested in feeling something of what is happening here. And then in my own personal world, you know, I remember my boy, my youngest son, he had about 1 day a week, he would wake up and say, "I'm Anna today." And so he would want to be dressed as a girl. He'd want to go out in the pram as a girl, and I would have to go to the supermarket as his dad and meet people, and they would say, "Hey, who's this?" And then I would have to explain that this was what he wanted. So that was a very small push in my own family for standing up for the way the expression that was moving in my son was important. And you multiply that to family gatherings of being able to stand up. I remember at one point, my mother decided that I must be psychotic, because when I stood up at a family gathering, I was basically just standing up to say, my heart is hurting. My heart's hurting in this family about the way that we treat each other and the way we speak at Christmas dinner, like everybody licking their tongue around the wounds of everybody's wound for that's been going on for 10 years or 20 years, all of the unspoken gender wars between my parents, and all just got to a point that my heart couldn't handle it. I just stood and sobbed at the fucking dinner table for about 10 minutes, rambling incoherently. And, to them, it's like, oh, God, either you're gay or you're psychotic and you need some drugs or something. But I knew inside me, I just made a move towards sanity. I just stood in my own family and told the truth about the suffering that had always been in my heart because of the way they treated each other, the way we treated each other. So that was like a huge victory in my own world, even though the outside looked quite disordered. And, ever since then, every time I've had to stand on the edge of my own love and face the terror and the fear of being misunderstood, of being judged, of being criticized. So I feel like the small ones are no better than the great ones, and in terms of the great ones, one of the powerful ones I was remembering the other day was going and running a festival in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and the BBC, interviewing the local archbishop or whatever, who called us Satanists, and we're totally going to destroy the whole moral fiber of Northern Ireland. And the next day, the festival sold out, and there were farmers coming up to me saying, I had sex with my wife for the first time in 5 years, and it was just so glorious to feel sometimes who you are lips over into the media or into the papers or whatever, and that helps people. But that only exists built on a lifetime of doing the work. Going out for influence normally means you have to compromise the long journey that's real, which goes on in each person's own life. So yeah, be willing to stand up if you need to, but do the work in your families and your communities. Thank you, Michael.
Well done. Kia kaha.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just share a little bit more about the erotic side of sex and gender, because that's often where we are deeply encountering where our love meets its growth. So if we're truly allowing love to move us, it will move us through our attractions and into connections. And one of the things that happens in relationship is what adolescents want to do is they want to strengthen their own identity. They're afraid of being no one, so they want to be someone. And so relationships that are adolescent, which, the majority of relationships, have a strong sense of identity, that through relating with somebody else, you strengthen your own self. But mature relationships transcend identity, that actually when you're meeting with someone else, you know that that meeting them is going to force you to radically upgrade and change your concept of what love is and how you're going to express it. So instead of going into relationship to shore up and make sure that you feel more secure as someone, you're going into relationship as a high risk adventure sport. You're going in as an extreme example of risking the identity that you already have and having everything that you know about yourself be opened by the genuine encounter to an expression of love that may be different than the way that you are expressing it. So this is going in eyes open into the realm of gender and relationship and polarity and eros, knowing that it's going to tear down your concept of who you are. It's going to be a self-transcending annihilation journey rather than a self-esteem propping up journey. And then I think that there's an honest, lovers can then find lovers, with the writing on the wall, with the agreement at the beginning that love is not something that is going to make my identity stronger. It's going to make my identity more and more challenged. So maybe something in that area where love is forcing you right now in your world to reappraise your whole concept of who you are and who you have been. Yeah, well, standing up for love can be as simple as raising your hand on a Zoom podcast, instead of just feeling your heart beating and doing nothing about it. Okay, well, I'm quite happy to keep talking. I do that well. So yeah, maybe I'll talk about gender identity and pronouns, this idea of who we are changing and then trying to get other people to understand what's going on inside us. That, okay, you might see that I'm in a male body and you might have all kinds of judgments about that, but I want to tell you that I identify as a she or as a they or as an it, or because I'm trying to get past what you see on the outside and reveal something of what's going on the inside of me in terms of the story that I'm telling myself. And one of the beautiful Trojan horses of that is when we start to adopt things like astrology or mythology or the gene keys or any of these systems that change us from being an individual to being part of an archetype. And it's hilarious when you think about it, that we spend all of this energy trying to be an individual person. And then one of the ways of trying to be an individual person is by then saying, well, I'm a Scorpio. So now I've moved from being one of 8 billion to being one of 12, or, I'm a gene key XYZ, because we long for the fact that we are archetypal and we are just one. So we try to make a bridge between the individual self that has become someone and the universal self that is everyone and no one. So these great systems, and we use at Haidam, we use mandalas and so on, help us make a bridge between the individual and the universal. Because it's a small step from saying, oh my God, I'm just discovered my astrology or my gene keys or whatever, and it's revealing this deeper level dimension of myself. And I'm actually, this particular being. It's a small step from there to realize I am the whole lot. Instead of just like a soul incarnating on the planet, I'm the soul of humanity that's been incarnating for millions of years. And instead of just that, I'm the soul of the earth. And so actually, I'm just a wave in that ocean, but I am that whole ocean. So the archetypal stories and the mythologies that you tell yourself or that you adopt in, from the deep stories of the world around you are just a bridge between your individual self and your universal self. So the same with your gender identity. Once you decide that, okay, I'm a he or I'm a she or I'm a they or I'm something, it's like hold that story as like a tentative story that's revealing this much of the truth. In the same way that religion is a great story, like Christianity or Islam or something. It's a story that is the best archetypal understanding of our relationship with God or the earth at the point. But if you hold it lightly, it can change. If you become fundamentalist, then you make the story more important than love, which birthed the story. So be careful in your individual life that you don't become a fundamentalist with your identity. That just because you were this way at one point, that you have to be that way forever, because love will not want you to do that. Love will want you to keep challenging who you think you are. Okay, so yeah, unless there's other burning questions then or comments, and I feel like this might be wrapping up for me. So I'd like to also ask the people here whether you have anything that you want to share that would take us deeper into the journey of love.
I have a question or a curiosity, and I'm hoping that I can articulate what's arising in me. Because on the journey that we are currently on of unbecoming, which, feels like an appropriate word, and also in my experience, and maybe I can, where's my start video? In my experience as a white woman who is culturally displaced, from my ancestors and never having set foot on the land where my cultural lineage began, I have a lot of grief around a cultural displacement. And I'm experiencing I'll go with discomfort around what you're saying in terms of I'm going to make generalizations as white folks sometimes romanticize cultures that have passed and cultures that we have had an active role in devastating. And my curiosity is this, and this feels really scary, is this concept of becoming love, is this almost transcending all of those cultures that were built from the earth and with the earth in animistic ways? Is this transcending even that, or is this a remembering of that and a coming home to that? And I'm shaking right now in this, I don't know it. Yeah, I'm just, that's my curiosity.
I think it's a really good question. And I think for me, it's both. It's both a coming home and a transcending, because I feel that the progression of human consciousness on the planet has moved from being very deeply animistically identified with and connected with the earth to then becoming more connected with its erotic self, and then its emotional self, and its mental self, and then transmental self. So there's been an evolution of the soul. But the soul is all of those things. The soul is not just the development of consciousness. The soul is our shamanic connections with nature, as well as our transmental awakening as the loving consciousness of the universe. It is also the energy of the sap rising up of the earth. And so we're coming back to the indigenous understandings and shamanic understandings without culturally appropriating them. We're coming back to them inside ourselves, but we're not sliding back down to when that's all we were aware of. And, we do romanticize our past, and there were amazing pieces in our reptile evolution that we come back to. There are amazing pieces in our limbic system, but the neocortex is also an important development. So I feel like awakening our spirituality is important as awakening our shamanic power, and including direct perception of the soul through the body, as the soul through the mind, as the soul through the eros. All of these different levels of intelligence is just soul expressing through multi-dimensions of ourselves. So I feel like on the planet, if you see it, whether it's the animistic traditions coming back or the non-dual traditions coming back, they're all an expression of the human soul, the way that we have learned how to be sentient. And in an ideal spiritual path now, someone would include all of those parts. That includes direct sensation through their body and validating that as an important source of soul information, as much as direct awareness of the non-dual at the core of consciousness. So I don't know if that helps your inquiry. I think, you know, how it's relevant to this conversation about sex and gender is that that love can't be contained by even our current concepts of what gender is and our current understanding of what it is to be in a male body or a female body. So if we hold it with some uncertainty and some trust, that love will keep showing us.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi. Hey, Marcus.
Hey, beautiful to be with you. Yeah, I had this deep resonance when you're talking about love as a path of annihilation, and feeling that deeply in my relationship here at the temple. And I guess this question is coming of this polarity of the death for me as like standing in a committed relationship and standing up for love in container, and the deep fear that comes up. And in some parts of me are really unwilling to do that. They think of death as giving up, and dying as like letting go and shedding and dissolving, versus really standing up and really being, fully in. And wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah. Stand up and die at the same time. That's the trick, isn't it? You know? Yeah, I think that the whole point of the dissolving paths, the paths that actually allow us to die to any identity and to just disappear back into the oneness of nothingness, is for the very times when our individual self in its most human has to stand up for love. Because that's the time you most need to remember that you don't exist. When everything's coming at you, you know, when all of the judgments and all of the projections and all of the wave that would make you not want to stand is coming to you, that's the time you need to have at the core that experience of your not existing, of your, you know, like, they can't kill me, I don't exist. You know? Of everything that's in your emotional body and your mental body and your biological self screaming out like, run, don't stand up here in this. So I feel like the more that we are called upon to stand for love, the more threatened we feel as a body mind, and the more we need the deep truth at the core of our own being, which is that we are also beyond all of this while we're in it. You know, it's all a fucking cosmic joke at the same time as it's suicidal. You know, at the same time as that we're desperate and broken, we're also like, some part of us is smiling like a Cheshire cat at the whole thing. It's just that we lose contact with it, you know? So I feel like both paths are important, and you've done the path of like really anchoring yourself in that part that is timeless and eternal. But the reason we do that is so that in incarnation, we can bring that in and then crucify ourselves. In the name of love, you know?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. Bruce, I'm trying to understand two concepts. Maybe it is my personal misunderstanding, but here you go. Love, and it goes around love in a relationship. So you were saying before how we go about in a relationship, ideally treating our core woundings before going to the relationship, so the partner is not solving that wounding, it's not the source of healing from that wounding. But at the same time, I think, or at least most of the partnerships I've been, I wasn't there yet to be able not to allow polyamories or to allow love flow outside the relationship. But as I feel it in from today is true love doesn't know that threshold to, and that's great. But now what I'm conflicted right now is what we were talking last week on core relationship, when core meets core, and you are in that deep state of connecting to somebody, then it's, I guess, a different story when love stays within that relationship and does not flow around. I'm still trying to disentangle both concepts. Maybe you can clarify your thoughts on that. And I yeah, that's what I got right now.
I'm hearing something about we have core wounding, and actually we're not going to become perfect and not have core wounding in order to go into relating. So that most that we can do is like be honest, like here's my core wounding as much as I know it, and I may have other levels that will come up in my relating. And yes, I have the ideology that love should be able to flow freely, and that should encompass you flowing with someone else or me flowing with somebody else. And that's a wonderful ideology. And the reality is I'm frozen stiff and I want to kill you. And there's no way in the world that my somatic system is going to cope with this ideology that you're trying to foist on me, right? So many people idealistically leap into love should move freely and let's try it, and then they are catatonic in the corner, and we know a lot about that in this place here where we've explored all of that. And so that's one of the ways that love is teaching us, okay, so how are we colonizing our own somatic, shamanic truths with our concept of how love is compared with actually what's possible for us? And then even if what's possible for us is that hardwired. So let's say I just seem to have a jealous male body that, maybe is hardwired for millions of years, and maybe that's unshiftable. Or maybe if I have experiences that can give me safe reference points and expand my loving in such a way that I can rewire my body, maybe. So I think that comes down to authenticity in relationship. And it comes down to being truthful about what's possible for you as well as what you might want. And to have that deep conversation with your partners about both what you want and what your core is, and to the extent of your wounding. And I know a lot of people do a lot of stuff around attachment theories and other things so that they can slowly condition their body minds to be able to handle what their souls would like.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Bruce. My name is Namis. You don't know me. I have a blessing to witness your transmission, your interaction from sauna. We were at 1.5 of us, just naked listening to you. And one thing comes to my mind, like we're all more or less beginners on our way home, return to that place. At some point in my life, I realized and learned actually many things that, we're all one, that we're all brothers and sisters, but it all was just on a mental level. it's like, yeah, it sounds good. It's good philosophy. But at some point when I feed my mind with tons of knowledge and just allow to sit, I got this realization while on Sacred Plants gives me. And it was like, we're all, so if there is a creator and everything else can be called family, like soul family, whatever, and then we come to the bodies. So each of us has a soul pulling. So it means I don't care how my body looks like. I don't care, shape or form, but I feel the pulling towards someone. And that someone is anyone different, or everyone is different, but at the end, it comes to the point that it's all the same. Like all the relationships is just a continuation of the same soul going through lessons, while mind can handle that, while body can handle that.
Yes, I get it. So is there the point or the question?
It's just this realization that like we are all one energy in these bodies, and everything else is just a story that we put to it, that it doesn't matter. It's just there is a pulling, and then we create a story about it. We have to learn something, of course, but then and that's how I put it in a simple way. So I just want to ask, is this in resonance with you, or you have something like a little bit shape refined from your perspective?
Okay, thank you. I can see you in the sauna now. Looks good. So I think yes, we have a pull. The thing that struck me about what you're sharing is that it's one thing to, I think someone said even a donkey can carry a library on its back. That it's one thing to accumulate knowledge about philosophy and high philosophy. It's another thing to embody it. And I think that when we come down into the sexual area, then yes, we may all be one family and we all may love each other, but when does that stop? Does it stop when my neighbor, does something across my fence line? Does it stop when my partner, does something that I don't want? And if we are all one, what do we do with our money? Once we come down the chakras and bring the love that's in that transcendent all the way down into the lower chakras, it's like, well, if we're all one, how come all of the wealth is in 1% of the hands in the world? How come there's 30,000 children dying a day of starvation? If we're all one, why aren't we demonstrating our oneness in our interactions with each other? So then philosophy has to integrate with action. And love has to be made real in our immediate lives. So at a certain point, and most people who follow a philosophical path then have to encounter how do they live in the world with their philosophy. If they did an audit of their value system and the way that they spend their money and the way that they are in their relationships, how would they look? So then now the practical work comes of like yes, we wake up as love, and now we get to live it. So that's what I was saying last week. The first question in the exam that we're all in is, what have you learned about love? What do you know about love? And the second is a practice, which is show me. Like now show me and demonstrate that in your own life. Demonstrate that in the way that you use your money, and the way that you earn your money, and the way that you treat your neighbors, and the way that you are in your day-to-day relationship. And my experience is I fail regularly and completely, and that journey of being healthily shamed in the face of what your ideology is and what you actually are capable of living. And it comes back to the last person's question, is like, we may have great ideologies about love, but the truth is, look out and see what we're doing as humanity on the planet. And it's heartbreaking, the gap between what we would love to be and what we are. for me, like I've got this opportunity, you know, in my life to have this center and to be with bunches of people who are dedicated to living that question. You know, what is the question of how we can actually bring the ideology of love, how in a modern day mystery school, which used to be a Catholic monastery, like how to be a priest or priestess today, beyond gender, beyond sex, beyond repression of sexuality for the sake of spirituality. How do you genuinely still ask the timeless and eternal question that humans have always asked, you know, which is, how do we express the divinity that we are at our core? How do we express that in this day and age that is healthy and right? And then at the moment, how do we do that on a planet that desperately needs humans to answer that question and show what that answer is? So the next podcast webinar transmission I'm going to do in 2 weeks is going to be about money and about economics. You know, I would say that sexuality is one of the most areas where there's greatest shadow on the planet. And I think money is a very close second to that, in the way that we are in our economic lives as a direct relationship to love. So that's going to be the next question. So we have a few more minutes if somebody would still like to share before we conclude. Hi.
Yeah, there's something about being love in the world, the radiation of love, and the vulnerability of that, and having good boundaries. Because I noticed that my way of setting boundaries often is to diminish the radiance, to contract. And I actually don't want that. You know, I want to be just open and just radiate out. And I noticed that I actually do that since very young, you know, like, yeah, the way to set boundaries was to take back. And I feel like that's just what I don't want to do anymore. But I also don't want to hug everyone all the time, you know, like, and I don't want to have sex with everybody. So I don't know actually how to do that. And I notice, like, on a daily basis that I actually struggle with that, even in this community, you know, like, how do I stay just open? I get up and I love, you know. But then walking through to the cottage is already like, oh, how do I? Yeah, just don't know how to do that.
You really don't want to have sex with me? So yeah, it was beautiful, and I feel it touches on something that's probably part of all of our paths as we emerge, is that if you're emerging as love in a world that's desperately seeking love, how do you stay safe? How do you stay safe when actually your heart calls you into connection and you start to feel suffering everywhere and in everyone, and love wants to move towards that, and yet you are still a human being with your own your own limitations and your own capacities? Like, how do you honor the fact that you have to have boundaries as an encapsulated body mind, at the same time you are boundless love? And I feel like that's a living question. That's the question you're living in this community. And the vulnerability, I feel, for almost all of us in our divine children is, first of all, a naivety, that we actually start to meet the world with our love and are horrified at the way that we're met with that. And so then we start to close down and we start to be protective and careful about how we interact and relate with others. But you need your fierce warrior, but not standing in front of your heart, but standing behind your heart. That's there for you to fall back into. And I think that's the part we all have, that we know somewhere deep inside us that we came for this journey of emergence. And we knew it wasn't going to be easy. So it kind of is a bit naive to come and show up for love, and then when love gets tough, go, oh my God, that's too hard. So we have to sustain ourselves on that journey. We have to fall back on our strength, the part of us that is unlimited and never been hurt and never wounded and is always at our core. We have to fall back on that, and we have to put healthy boundaries when we're unable to express the love that we may want to express in our relationships with people. But how do you have healthy boundaries that isn't saying no to somebody else's longing for love? And I guess that's the question that we have these kind of conversations for, is to speak into what Sam was saying, that helplessness of knowing that we are loved, knowing that we want to pour ourselves into the world, and knowing we have limited capacity to do that. And also, if we're going to sustain our life, if you're going to sustain a life of living love, you're going to have to monitor your own resources and how you use them. And while it may be true that it's beautiful to be open to loving everyone, there's only so many relationships you can spend your time with. You know, there's only so many conversations you can have about how you're wounding with someone. There's only so many journeys that you can hold somebody else's soul on. So continuing to have a balance between what's true inside you and the love that's trying to emerge in you, and the need for love in your environment. That's what makes us who we are. All I've got on my screen is this sauna still, which is great. All right. So one of the things I've most loved about this webinar is the breaking through into things that are really touching us, you know, beyond the ideas of sex and gender. It's like, where are our hearts breaking with the need to keep loving and to love more than we've loved before? And I think that journey is upon us, all of us. It's on us deeply now. Like, that question is residing in your heart, whether you turn your attention to it or not, it's there. And that question is continuing to ask us what we know of love and what we are prepared to offer on the altar of what we know in order for love to reveal our next lesson. And I feel like in any culture of humans that are trying to make that journey, there's a deep vulnerability, there's a deep helplessness, there's a deep recognition of the big gap between what we're capable of and what's been asked of us. And that pulls us into connection with each other. And so, you know, hopefully this transmission that comes out every couple of weeks is a way of not just me sharing, you know, wisdom that's come through my journey, but us feeling each other on this journey of a movement forward into love, and finding the courage that comes from feeling other people are on the same journey, multiplied all over the world. So thank you for tuning in. And for those who want to drop into the topic of economics and currency and cryptocurrencies and how love can start clothing itself in our economic world, and then I'll see you in 2 weeks.